The wind tore across the Montana plains that night like a beast freed from chains. It screamed against the wooden walls of the small farmhouse, rattling the loose shutters and sending cold dust through the cracks. Inside, a woman knelt on the splintered floor, her arms wrapped around a small child. Two more huddled beside her, their little faces hidden in the folds of her torn shawl. Her name was Clara Mae Whitfield, and she had stopped crying hours ago. The bruises on her face had dried to a dull violet. The blood on her lip caked into a crust that cracked when she breathed. Behind her, the door stood open, swaying slightly. Her husband, Elias Whitfield, had stormed out at dusk, his boots pounding against the dirt, his curses echoing long after he was gone. The words still burned in her mind. "You gave me no sons, only useless mouths. You cursed woman." For the third time in 6 years, Clara had given birth to a daughter. The latest, a small baby wrapped in a faded cloth, slept quietly in the cradle beside her. The older girls, Ruthie and May, clung to her, silent and trembling. They had learned early that silence was safer than tears. The lamp on the table flickered, the oil nearly gone. The house was cold and hollow, like the heart of the man who owned it. Outside, the horses neighed restlessly in the corral, picking up the unease that hung in the air. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the dark hills. Clara slowly stood, her knees trembling. Her eyes drifted to the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. The face staring back at her didn't look like hers anymore. Once there had been warmth there, laughter, hope. Now there was only exhaustion and something darker. She looked at her daughters, 3 pairs of frightened eyes, and whispered, "Go to sleep, my loves. Mama's here." She didn't believe the words herself. The night dragged on, heavy and endless. She rocked the baby until her arms went numb. She thought about running, where she always did after he beat her. But where would she go? The nearest town was 20 miles away, across hills and rivers. She had no horse, no food, and 3 children. The world beyond this ranch was cruel to women, especially ones with nothing. Then sometime past midnight she heard it, the crunch of hooves on gravel. Her heart jumped. She snuffed the lamp and pressed her daughters close. The sound came closer, steady, deliberate. Not Elias. He always staggered, half-drunk, shouting before he reached the gate. This rider was silent. Through the crack of the door she saw a figure dismount. A tall man, impossibly tall, broad as the barn door, his long coat whipping in the wind. The moon caught his face for a moment, rugged, bearded, eyes like cold fire. He didn't knock, he waited. Clara's heart hammered. She reached for the old rifle leaning by the wall, though she knew it was empty. The stranger finally spoke, his voice deep, steady, not unkind. "Ma'am," he said, "you don't have to hide. I ain't here to hurt you." Clara said nothing. She tightened her grip on the rifle. Her daughters whimpered softly. The man stepped closer, hands raised. "Name's Jonas Hale. I run the ranch east of the ridge. Folks call me the Giant Rancher." His eyes drifted to the bruises on her face. "I seen your husband in town earlier. He was drinking, bragging how he taught his wife a lesson." Shame and anger burned in her chest. She turned away, whispering, "It's none of your concern, mister." Jonas took off his hat. "Maybe not. But I don't stomach a man beating on a woman for bringing life into this world, especially not when that woman's got 3 young'uns dependent on her." She wanted to tell him to leave, to go back to his big ranch and his easy life, but her throat closed. The words wouldn't come. Jonas waited, patient as a mountain. Then he said quietly, "Come with me." Clara froze. "What?" "Pack what you can carry. I'll take you and your girls to my place tonight. You can rest, eat, then decide what comes next." Her heart thudded in her ears. "Come with me." The words echoed through her like a prayer she'd forgotten she knew. But she shook her head. "He'll kill me," she whispered. "If he finds me?" Jonas stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "He won't. Not while I'm breathing." She looked up then, really looked at him. The man was a giant, shoulders like stone, hands scarred from years of work, eyes that held both fury and compassion. For the first time in years, someone wasn't looking at her with disgust or pity, but with belief, as if she was worth saving. Still, fear gripped her. She glanced at her daughters, sleeping now, their tiny bodies curled on the blanket. Could she risk their lives? Could she trust a stranger? Jonas seemed to sense her war inside. He said softly, "I buried my wife 5 winters ago. She died bringing our son into the world. I know what loss looks like, ma'am. I seen it in your eyes. You ain't got to say a word. Just come with me." The storm outside broke then, rain hammering against the roof. The thunder roared and the wind moaned through the cracks. Clara flinched, her breath trembling. For a moment she imagined Elias riding back, his rage blazing. Then she looked at Jonas again, calm, steady, a man carved out of the earth itself. Something inside her shifted. Without another word, she wrapped the baby tighter, woke her older girls, and whispered, "We're leaving." She grabbed a shawl, a small tin of biscuits, and the locket her mother had given her before she died. That was all. Jonas waited, silent, until she stepped into the rain, the baby in her arms, her daughters holding onto her skirts. The wind howled, but she didn't feel the cold. Not anymore. Jonas led his horse forward, motioning for her to climb onto the wagon he'd brought. She hesitated at the edge of the yard, glancing back at the house, the walls that had trapped her, the bed where she'd bled, the cradle where she'd wept. For years she thought those walls were her world. Now she realized they were her prison. "Come on," Jonas said, voice firm but gentle. "Ain't nothing back there worth remembering." She climbed onto the wagon, pulling her girls close. Jonas took the reins, flicked them, and the horses began to move. The wheels rolled over the mud, the rain washing away their tracks. Behind them, the farmhouse shrank into darkness until it was swallowed by the storm. Clara sat silent, her heart pounding. For the first time, she didn't feel fear and only disbelief. She didn't know where she was going, what tomorrow would bring, or who this man beside her truly was. But she knew one thing. She was never going back. Jonas drove in silence, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the road ahead. After a long while, he said quietly, "You're safe now." The words hit her harder than any blow Elias had ever given. They didn't feel real. She turned to him and whispered, "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her for a long moment, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. "Because no one did it for my wife when she needed help," he said. "And I swore I'd never stand by again." The wagon rolled on through the storm, the wheels creaking, the wind howling. Lightning flashed across the plains, lighting the path ahead. Clara clutched her daughters tighter, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Somewhere inside her, a spark flickered to life, faint, trembling, but alive. Hope. That night, as dawn began to break over the horizon, the giant rancher's wagon rolled through the gates of the Hale Ranch, a vast stretch of green hills and wooden fences. Bathed in silver morning light, Clara stared at it dazed. It was more land than she'd ever seen in her life. Jonas stopped the horses, turned to her and said quietly, "Welcome home, ma'am." Home. The word felt foreign on her tongue, but as she looked at her daughter's sleeping faces, she let herself believe it, just a little. She didn't know that this ranch, and the man who'd brought her here, would change everything she thought she knew about love, faith, and freedom. The next few weeks passed like a dream Clara never dared to have. Days melted into one another beneath the wide Montana sky. The Hale Ranch woke with the dawn, the clang of the bell, the soft whinnies of horses, the smell of biscuits and black coffee drifting from the kitchen. For the first time in years, Clara felt her mornings begin with warmth instead of fear. Her daughters laughed again, barefoot and free, their giggles echoing through the stables. Jonas Hale worked from sunrise to sunset. His hands were always busy, fixing fences, shoeing horses, driving cattle, but somehow, he always found time to check on her. Never intruding, never demanding. Sometimes he'd pause by the fence as she hung laundry, tip his hat and say, "Looks like the sky's in a good mood today." Other times, he'd bring her little things and a ribbon for the baby's hair, a small carved toy for Ruthie. To anyone else, it might have seemed like kindness, but Clara began to sense something deeper behind those small gestures, a quiet care, a protectiveness he never spoke of, but she could feel. Every night after the girls were asleep, she would sit by the window of her small cabin and watch the light still, burning in Jonas's house. Sometimes she saw his shadow move past the window, slow and heavy. The man carried loneliness like a coat he couldn't take off. One morning she found him by the creek, mending a broken fence post. The water sparkled under the sun, birdsong filling the air. Clara approached with a pail of water. "You've been out here since dawn," she said softly. He looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "A ranch don't wait for a man to rest," he said with a smile. She set the pail down. "You could at least let me help." Jonas laughed, a deep, warm sound that startled her. "What you gonna do, Clara Mae? Hammer me into the ground when I ain't looking?" She smirked. the corner of her lip curling, something she hadn't done in years. Maybe. He studied her for a moment, his smile fading into something softer. It's good to see you smiling again. She looked away quickly, embarrassed. I suppose I forgot how. Well, he said, standing tall, I reckon you're remembering just fine. They worked side by side that day. When the sun began to dip low, painting the land gold, Jonas lifted the last post and said, There, strong enough to hold through any storm. Clara wiped her hands on her skirt. Wish I could say the same for me. He turned toward her. You're stronger than you think. You just ain't had anyone remind you lately. The words struck something deep inside her. For years, every voice around her had told her she was weak, cursed, less than. But this man, this giant of a man, spoke to her as if she were equal, capable, worth saving. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it might be true. But peace in the West never lasted long. One late evening, when the sky was bruised purple and gold, Jonas rode into town for supplies. Clara stayed back to put the girls to bed. The baby fussed, Ruthie hummed softly to calm her sister, and for a moment the house felt like home. Then, a sound. A distant echo. The sharp rhythm of hooves. Her blood froze. She knew that sound. Ruthie whispered, Mama? Quiet, Clara breathed. She blew out the lamp, heart pounding. Outside, the hoofbeats grew louder. Then silence. A shadow passed across the window. A knock. Clara. The voice turned her veins to ice. Elias. She clutched the baby close, her breath shaking. Clara, he said again, his tone cold and dangerous. You can hide, but I can smell you, woman. You think I'd let some overgrown rancher steal my wife? The door creaked. He was trying the latch. Ruthie, take your sister, Clara whispered. Hide behind the barrels. Don't move till I say. The girls obeyed without a word. Clara grabbed the iron poker from beside the stove and stood near the door. Her pulse roared in her ears. The latch rattled again, harder. Clara, open this damn door. Then a crash. The door burst open, slamming against the wall. Elias stumbled inside, his face red, eyes wild. He reeked of whiskey and dirt. Where's the giant? He sneered. Out playing hero while you warm his bed? Get out, Elias, Clara said, her voice trembling but firm. He laughed. That same cruel, hollow laugh she'd heard too many times. You forget who you're talking to. He stepped closer, his hand raised. You think he can protect you forever? He ain't here now. Her grip tightened on the poker. Don't touch me. But he lunged. Clara swung with every ounce of strength she had. The poker struck his shoulder, sending him reeling back with a roar. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it hard. Pain shot through her arm, but before he could strike again, the door burst open. Jonas stood there, eyes blazing. Get your hands off her, he said. Elias turned, sneering. Well, if it ain't the savior himself. I was wondering when you'd show. Jonas didn't answer. He strode forward and in one motion slammed Elias against the wall. The whole cabin shook. I told you once, Jonas said low and steady. You come near her again and I'll end you. Elias spat blood. You think you scare me? Jonas's fist crashed into his jaw. Elias crumpled to the floor. But even beaten, Elias grinned through broken teeth. You can't keep her, he hissed. She's mine. The law says so. Jonas glared down at him. Then the law's wrong. He grabbed Elias by the collar, dragged him outside into the dust, and threw him to the ground. You ever cross this fence again, I swear I'll bury you right here in the dirt. Elias staggered to his feet, spitting blood. This ain't over. Hale, I'll see you hang for stealing another man's wife. Jonas didn't flinch. Then you best ride fast, because if I see you again, there won't be a trial. Elias hesitated and saw the look in Jonas's eyes, then turned and mounted his horse. The sound of hooves thundered away into the darkness until it faded completely. Jonas stood there for a long moment, breathing hard. When he finally turned, Clara was at the doorway, clutching her wrist, her eyes wide. He stepped closer, his voice soft now. You hurt? She shook her head, though tears streamed down her cheeks. No, not really. He took her hand gently, inspecting the bruised wrist. You're safe now, he said. She nodded, her lip trembling. You keep saying that, she whispered. But what if it's not true? Jonas looked at her, really looked at her. Then I'll make it true. Her tears broke then. He caught her as she collapsed against him, her sobs muffled against his chest. For years she'd wept alone in silence. But that night she cried in someone's arms, and it felt like healing. Jonas didn't speak. He just held her, one hand steady on her back until the storm inside her quieted. When she finally looked up, the moonlight caught her face. Bruised, streaked with tears, but strong, he brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're braver than most men I know," he murmured. She managed a weak smile. "That's a low bar, Mr. Hale." He chuckled quietly, and for the first time in a long while, they both laughed, tired, broken laughter that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Days passed. The town sheriff came and went. Jonas told him everything. Elias had vanished, likely ridden south to avoid charges. The sheriff said he'd keep an eye out, though everyone knew the law in the West was as thin as dust. Clara didn't leave the ranch for weeks. She worked, cooked, helped with the horses, anything to keep her hands busy. But at night, when the wind howled through the pines, she still felt that chill, the fear that one day Elias would return. Jonas noticed, but he didn't press. Instead, he built walls, real ones. Stronger gates, reinforced locks, a new rifle mounted near the door. He didn't say it was for her, but she knew. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her daughters play, his expression softening in a way that broke her heart. He treated them like his own, teaching them to feed the horses, showing them how to braid rope. Ruthie called him Uncle Jonas, though sometimes, when she forgot herself, she just said Pa. The first time that happened, Jonas froze. Then he smiled, eyes glistening just a bit, and said, "That'll do just fine." Clara saw it all. The way he never asked for thanks, never expected anything. He just gave quietly, endlessly, and every day, she felt something grow in her chest, something fragile and terrifying. One evening, months later, she found him in the barn, sharpening a knife under the glow of a lantern. "You ever think about leaving all this?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "Where would I go? The land's all I've ever known. I mean," she hesitated. "You ever think about starting over? With someone?" Jonas's hand stilled. He looked up slowly, eyes meeting hers. "That depends," he said. "Someone like who?" Her breath caught. The silence stretched between them, heavy and alive. "I don't know," she whispered. "Maybe someone who's been broken too." He stood, the light flickering across his face. "Then maybe," he said, "they could build something whole together." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two souls carved by pain, standing at the edge of something neither dared to name. Then softly, Clara said, "Jonas," but before she could finish, Ruthie's voice called from outside. "Mama, supper's ready." Clara blinked, stepping back. "We should—" Jonas nodded. "Yeah, we should." They walked out together, side by side, the air thick with words left unspoken. Winter came. Snow blanketed the ranch, quieting everything. The girls built snowmen, Jonas chopped firewood, and Clara found herself laughing again, truly laughing. One night, as snowflakes drifted past the window, Jonas sat by the fire, whittling a small wooden horse for the baby. Clara watched him, the warmth of the flames glowing on his face. "Jonas," she said softly. He looked up. "I never thanked you for saving us." He smiled faintly. "You did that yourself, Clara. I just opened the door." She shook her head. "No, you did more than that. You made me believe again." He set the carving aside, his gaze steady on hers. "Believe in what?" She swallowed. "That not all men destroy what they touch." The silence that followed was thick and tender. The fire crackled softly. Then Jonas said, "You and those girls gave this place life again. You gave me something to fight for." Her eyes shimmered. "And if he ever comes back?" Jonas's voice was calm, certain. "Then he'll find he's too late." She reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just let her hold it. And in that moment, the quiet, the warmth, the unspoken promise, Clara Mae Whitfield finally understood what freedom felt like.